muffins, muesli bars, fresh fruit, banana bread, and then we...
But they're still sleeping now, right? Sorry? Are they sleeping now?
It's too cold for them right now.
Raining, it's raining. It doesn't rain here. Yes, I know that, but I mean, that's covered in flowers here. They're really coming rain out.
Bush fruits, or like fruits in this area. So all of the yellow little fruits is the bush fig, so this is what we call ili, and the yellow ones are not ripe yet. If they're ripe, they turn a bit more like dark orange, which are over there. And so these, if you slice them in half, have like the inside of our figs as well, and they're very, very sweet. So these definitely have a lot of vitamin C as well. And that is what we call our noli. So these have like the 2 to 5, the amount of vitamin C of 2 to 5 oranges. We go back in time to 550 million years ago. So a very, very long time. And 550 million years ago, we had a very big mountain range out here, a little bit like the Himalayas, so a couple of kilometers high, 2,000 kilometers wide. And because it was so massive, it was covered with a lot of ice and snow. And so over many millions of years, the Earth slowly started to warm up, and so all of these ice caps started to melt. So big rivers started to form down the mountains. Now, a very big difference between back then and now is that nowadays we have life on Earth. So we have plants that grow on top of mountains, and these plants protect the mountains from eroding away. But back then there was no life on Earth, and so there was no botanical protection. And without the botanical protection and with these big rivers going down the mountains, erosion happened very, very quickly. And so big chunks of the mountain were taken from top to bottom. And at the bottom we had two alluvial fans. And alluvial fans, the easy explanation for that is basically a big hole or a big pocket in the ground. So the first alluvial fan started to fill up with all the big chunks of the rock, rocks. But if you think about it, if we have a glass and we fill it up with big chunks of rocks, at a certain point the big chunks don't fit in anymore, but there are always small gaps in between that allows like sand and lighter material to travel through. That is the same thing that happened out here. It was full with all of the big chunks of rocks, but then there were gaps in between that allowed the sand and the lighter material to travel through to the second alluvial fan. So that one filled up with all of the lighter material, and that again took a couple of millions of years. And then we jump in time to 500 million years ago. This 500 million years ago, we had a very big inland sea that covered most of central Australia, including these two alluvial fans. Now, with a lot of water comes a lot of pressure. Pressure is friction, and friction creates heat. So basically what happened with the pressure of this ocean is that these two alluvial fans started to cook. And so instead of having loose material, they started to fuse together into two solid rock formations. But these rock formations were still underground. Then another jump in time to 450 million years ago, and the inland sea has retreated. And over at Alice Springs, which is roughly a 5-hour drive away from here, we had what we call an orogeny. And orogeny means the formation of mountains. So it comes with a lot of movement underground, so tectonic plates shifting, bumping into each other, pushing each other up. And that is what created the West McDonald Ranges, which are still out there today. But the second thing that happened is that shockwaves were sent through the earth, and these shockwaves hit these two alluvial fans. So the first one with the heavier material was tilted at a 20-degree angle, whereas the one with the lighter material was basically buckled and tilted, and the end part was flipped up. So instead of being horizontal, the end part became vertical. Now, over many millions of years, the surrounding earth slowly started to erode away. And basically what happened is that we now see the two top parts of both alluvial fans. So the one with the heavier material is what we nowadays know as Kata Tjuṯa. The one with the lighter material is what we nowadays know as Uluru. So Kata Tjuṯa is made out of conglomerate, which means all the big rocks fused together with the mud and the silt from the inland sea. Whereas Uluru is made out of sandstone, so all of the sand, the lighter material compressed together. Now, Kata Tjuṯa is, what did I say? I don't know these numbers in feet by heart. So Kata Tjuṯa is 3,497 feet above sea level. Uluru 2,831 feet. But they both go another 2 to 6 kilometers into the ground. So let's say 3 to 4 miles into the ground. So imagine 15 Ulurus on top of each other, and that is how far it extends into the ground. So we literally see just the two top parts of both alluvial fans. And yeah, what I always find most interesting about this story is how both alluvial fans, or both rock formations, have the same mother range. So they both stem from the Peterman ranges. But because the first alluvial fan started to act as a filter, all of the heavier material was deposited over here, all of the lighter material over there, And that is why Uluru and Kata Tjuṯa look so different nowadays.
So is the height pretty, I mean, it's not rising up anymore or going down? Is it pretty steady at those heights?
Bottom's so big.
So if you were to come out here in a million years, then the rocks are bigger because they do erode away, but the ground level erodes away quicker than the rocks themselves. So that is why over time more of the rocks is exposed. So
they're not moving, it's the environment around it.
yes, the rocks are stable. It's just the ground that is like
Just thinking.
yeah.
Very cool to know.
So from this morning's the perspective, we have like all of the vertical lines over Uluru. Those are all of the strata. So those used to be flat, but were then pushed up because of the shock waves. So all of the vertical lines that you saw is not because of the water, but those were the lines that used to be flat and were then pushed up.
Interesting. So that one's different, huh?
Yes, so that one is the one from the domes.
Yeah.
Yes. So the reason why we have the domes over at Kata Tjuṯa and not out here is because Uluru, Kata Tjuṯa is made from conglomerate, so that is a heavier material, and it was at a 20-degree incline. So because of that incline, it basically started to break open, and over many millions of years, all of those cracks have become bigger and bigger and bigger, and that is how the domes were formed. Yeah. Makes sense?
But so rounded is just from the
Erosion.
wind and the time. It's got the tops are so rounded now. Those rounded mounds.
Yes. So it has to do with water, wind.
Just erosion.
Just erosion. The right top corner, you see a patch with a lot of white lines. Then directly below that patch, you see what I always say, like a round Mickey Mouse. So like a half circle with two smaller circles on top. And that is a camel track. So camels were introduced here 150 years ago. So we know that this painting can't be any older than 150 years. But when during those years it has been made, we're not too sure of. Now, camels were introduced here because of all of the expeditions that took place in the 1870s. Because up until then, no one had been out to the center of Australia, so no one knew exactly what was out here. And so they needed to have animals that were very strong and very resilient, and the camels were perfect for that. And so they were used for quite a couple of decades also to build a lot of the infrastructure out here. But then after those decades, the motor car came around, and so the camels weren't needed anymore. But instead of killing them, they set them free in the wild, thinking that the camels wouldn't survive out here. But they came from Afghanistan, which has a lot harsher of an environment than what we have out here. And so the camels thrived, and what started off with just a couple of camels has now grown into a population of well over 1 million.
Oh no.
Yes, which means that we have the biggest population of wild camels in the world.
Oh.
Yeah, and camels out here are not the best animal to have because they can easily smell water from, let me convert this round section just like over there. But the reason as to why it has been cut off is because Uluṟu make their traditional bowls out of these like sections of the tree. So they cut them off and then shape them into piddies, as we call them. And depending on the size, they had like different uses. So the small ones were often used for collecting seeds, but then the bigger ones were even used for carrying babies around. But now that this part of the tree has been cut off, you can also see the inside, and you can see like the dark red sap that is in the tree. And that is also where this tree gets its name from, because this is a desert bloodwood, because the sap looks a little bit like blood. And the sap is part of bush medicine. So bush medicine is a collective. There's not just one plant or one tree that is bush medicine. There are many, many different trees out here that have different uses. Now, what would happen if you mix this sap with water? It becomes an antiseptic. So it was used by Uluṟu to make sure that if they had like a cut or a bruise or anything that could get infected, they would put that on it, and to make sure that the bacteria wouldn't like spread around or anything. So yeah, there are definitely various ways of making sure that they could work with nature to stay healthy out here.
Yeah.
So what kind of tools did they have to cut those off?
They would often have like very sharp stones. Yeah, and that is the main thing that they would use. Yeah, they would file it. Is that the word? Like sharp.
Originally look like this. They cut this guy. This is the blood inside.
And so during winter we have very cold nights, and then the water freezes and it turns into ice. And so ice is bigger than water, so it expands, so it makes the crack a little bit bigger. And then during the day the water melts again. And so that process over many millions of years. This is the biggest waterhole that we have over at Uluru. And at the far end it's roughly 3 meters deep, so around 1.5 times my size. If you look up, you see a vertical black line running to the top of Uluru. So all of the vertical black lines turn into waterfalls once it rains out here. So once the water stops flowing, then lichen is left, so an algae. And this algae is normally green, but it turns black because it has been here for millions of years and it has been burned by the sun. So basically all the black that you see is just burnt lichen. And along the black lines there are many like small indents in the rocks, so little waterholes, and those have to fill up and then they spill over into each other, and that is what creates the waterfalls. So all of the water that we have down here at the bottom is just rainwater, and almost all throughout the year there is some water to be found out here. In the summer the water level is definitely a lot lower, so all of the sand that you see in the middle is fully exposed. But yeah, to have water out here is also why this area is so very sacred, because water literally means life, because animals will go in here to drink, so that means that they can hunt.
Food resource I always like to start with is our lovely mulga tree, our beautiful Wanari. Now our beautiful Wanari, our mulga tree, here's our second most densest wood out here in the central desert, out here in Northern Territory. And this beautiful mulga tree provides quite a few food resources for us Ananu. We've got about, I'm pretty sure about 5 Ananu men would do, is pretty much clump them up into a ball. Because they are such a squishy fruit, you can just clump them into a ball. And because they release a sweet little nectar that's really sticky, it'll stay in that ball, kind of creating your own little fig toffee apple kind of thing. And what the Ananu men would do, the hunters, they just pretty much attach that to their traditional belt, their numbers. And when they're on the day's hunt, pretty much, if they're feeling hungry, there you go, you got yourself a nice little pocket snack as well for that one. Now that's our beautiful figs, our native illies as well for that one. Now onto our beautiful and lucky last one, my favourite. Now these beautiful fellas are native quandongs. Now these are red quandongs. We have quite a few quandongs, we've got blue ones as well, up in Queensland areas, top end areas. Now, and also New South Wales, I'm pretty sure. Now these beautiful red quandongs, these desert quandongs, are called mungaras in Pitjantjatjara. Now these beautiful fruits are quite unique only because they flourish only 2 months throughout the entire year. Now those 2 months are both September and October. Now how to know that, guys? We didn't have those sexy fireman calendars hanging up in our kitchen caves. No, what we had to use was the night sky for navigation to know when it was September and October. Not only that, we used night sky.
Have a look at this last bit.
You're welcome, love.
These pearls into a kangaroo tartare this afternoon, which we've already tried. And the other thing that we do with it is use it. Those are all the native ingredients I have for you today. I'd recommend that you come have a try at these because they're good for your very full of probiotics and vitamin C. They're very good for your gut as well as your skin. So if you want to come on holiday with a nice glow, these guys will definitely do it for you. You're also more than welcome to take photos. Just let me know and I'll get the right angle for you as well. But thank you.
Hey.
Birthday.
Yeah, it's your real birthday now.
That is the real
Voila.
Thank you. Oh, I like the potato already. Well, hey, good luck, guys.
Here we have our warm desert honey apple tahtata with caramelized pastry, anis mardo, and a vanilla bean gelato. For this one, we have Chef Tiala here, and she's gonna drizzle a little bit of honey on top of the apple tahtata.
Great.
For each tool, each weapon is designed for each person. You don't actually share these tools, you don't pass them down unless they're through your family heritage or even family lineages. But a lot of our tools and weapons we do make by hand by using sharp stones and sharp quartz, carving down the wood that you'll see. Now, all of the actual wood that we'll use is different species of trees, and depending on which environment you are in. Here in the central part of Australia, the local Ananu, they will actually use mulga wood. Mulga is actually a very strong hardwood. It's actually known as the Acacia anura. It is a very strong, dense wood, but also a light wood. So it allows us to carry it on our backs when we're going traveling as well. But mulga wood is a very, yeah, if a man was holding this, we'd call it chunpa. If a woman was holding this, they would name it something different. They would call this a wanna, just because the women also have a tool like this, and they have it very sharp at one end. The reason why this is because the wanna is referred to as a shovel or a digging stick. And you're not going to use it like a shovel, all right? Using it as a shovel, you're going to hurt your back, your shoulders, your knees. You're going to strain yourself really fast. So what we'll do is we'll sit in the nice shady areas and we'll move the wanna stick back and forwards. This technique will break the soil up, allowing us to dig. The next tool I want to talk about is my favorite tool, just because this is actually our large shields. Now, it's not a very large shield. It doesn't hide a big boy like me. It's not going to, all right? Mulga wood doesn't grow any wider than 20 centimeters in diameter. So this is actually how thin most... Now, you have alpha crux, beta crux, delta crux, gamma crux, and little epsilon crux right up there. Those are the 5 stars of the Southern Cross. Now, there is a misconception here in the Southern Hemisphere, and even to the Northern Hemisphere, that a lot of people believe that the Southern Cross will always guide you south. I bet anyone tonight, if you follow that Southern Cross tonight, straight down towards the horizon, you'll find yourself to Victoria. Not truly south, all right? And that's not that the Southern Cross is going to navigate your way south. It can only do that around about June, July. Well, you'll notice the Southern Cross rising and setting throughout the year. Around June, July, it'll be just above what we call the South Celestial Pole. Many cultures will actually follow that straight down towards south.